This video is brought to you with the support of TrueFire. Learn, practice, and play with TrueFire. Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5-Watt World. We're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. It was September of 1975 when the Kiss Alive album came out. Though it was their fourth album, it was a breakthrough record for them, and all at once, Kiss was everywhere. I remember looking at the cover and thinking, what is this? The makeup, the smoke, the costumes? But then the first listen, and the hard-driving rhythm guitars and the blues rock-infused solos by Ace Frehley were a perfect match, with just the right balance of catchy and heavy to propel them to superstardom. One listen, and I got it. School notebooks began to sport the band logo, and the farm kids in their muscle cars blasted Alive as they peeled out of the high school parking lot, the riffs of Rock and Roll All Night mingling perfectly with the sound of a 4-barrel carb on a small block Chevy motor. And on the cover of the album was Ace Frehley, playing a Les Paul, with 3 pickups. 3 pickups! Then in 1976, Fransman Comes Alive, and there's another black 3-pickup Les Paul. In 77, Al Di Meola's Elegant Gypsy with the Black Beauty and those bright white DiMarzio pickups. I knew the music and the album covers, but as a kid from the farm, I didn't know what these guitars were. So if, like me, you love to learn the backstories of the guitars that made the music of the time, then stay tuned, because this is the 5-Watt World short history of the Les Paul Custom. If you enjoy our videos, make sure to subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, grab a hoodie or Stomp preset pack to support what we do. And to become a bigger part of 5-Watt World, sign up for the Friends of 5-Watt on Patreon. The links are in the description. According to an interview that Les Paul did with Gourmet Guitars in 2009, Les always wanted to build 2 different colors of his signature guitar. In a meeting in around 1950, chairman of the board Maurice Berlin asked Les what those colors should be. Les's first response was gold. Immediately, those around the table started to argue, saying that the gold would turn green, etc., but Berlin overruled them and said, if that's what Les wants, that's what we're going to do. Les was getting up to leave the room, and Berlin said, hey, before you go, what's the other color going to be? And without hesitating, Les picked black. I've also read that Les liked the idea of a black guitar because it would make his hand stand out against the instrument on black and white television, and it certainly stands out on the cover of Time to Dream, where he can be seen holding it standing next to Mary Ford. After some fits and starts in 52 and 53 with the original gold model that you can see outlined in my Les Paul short history video, by 1954 they'd settled into a solid working design and they were ready, finally, to issue the Les's black guitar. That year, Gibson launched the Les Paul Custom. A Les Paul dressed up in a tuxedo, if you will, ready for the professional musician on their high-profile gig. In addition to the new black finish over the entire guitar, covering the top, back, and back of the neck, it had the new Tune-O-Matic bridge, an ebony fingerboard, larger celluloid block inlays, 7-ply binding around the top, and 5-ply binding along the neck and headstock. The headstock itself was larger, with a split diamond inlay, and of course, all the hardware was gold-plated. In addition, there were other custom features that made it look and sound different. Instead of the Clusons on the gold top model, the Custom had seal-fast tuners with pearloid buttons. But the low, narrow frets that Les requested were the biggest change to the feel of the guitar. Les believed that these made the instrument easier to play fast, and they earned the nickname of fretless wonder for the guitar. These frets were not universally embraced, with many players feeling they didn't give them enough to grab onto, particularly when bending strings. The second big difference was the new pickup in the neck position. It looked like a P90 in some ways, but was constructed in a very different way. The staple pickup, as it has come to be called, was developed by Seth Lover in late 52 or early 53 at the request of company president Ted McCarty. Rather than having a bar magnet underneath the coil as a P90 does, the pickup has 6 individual bar magnets of Alnico 5 alloy within the coils. This gave the pickup a crisp, bright tone that some described as more hi-fi. The individual pull pieces were height adjustable, giving it much in common with the DeArmond Dynasonic pickups and many of the Gretsch guitars of the mid-50s, and it seemed that the new pickup was chasing a similar, snappier tone, similar to the Dynasonic. Lover said in interviews that he chose rectangular magnets instead of round simply to differentiate its looks from other pickups in the marketplace at the time. Of course, with that kind of R&D investment, the pickup would end up in several of the high-end archtop electrics in the Gibson line at the time, like the L5 CES, ES5, and the Birdland. But the pickup had its start in the neck position of the Custom in '54. A standard and fatter-sounding P90 pickup was still used in the bridge position. The last major difference was hidden away under the luxurious black paint. Unlike the gold top with its maple cap under the gold, the Custom was made entirely from mahogany, including a carved mahogany top. The all-mahogany construction yielded a warmer tone in the Custom, with less snap and clarity than the maple top of the gold top. All of these differences were punctuated by the price of $325, which was fully $100 more than the gold top at the time of the Custom's introduction in '54. Since the guitar was designed specifically to suit Les's preferences, it seems that it appealed to fewer players, and the sales numbers bear this out. According to Gibson's shipping records, only 1,912 Customs were shipped between its introduction in '54 and when it was dropped from the line in 1960. During the same time window, Gibson sold around 7,000 gold tops. In that interview with Guitar Gourmet, Les admitted that he wasn't thinking of the market, just what he liked, when designing the Custom, and that maybe that wasn't the best way to sell guitars. Across the early years, the biggest change came in the form of the humbucking pickups in 1957. As much as the P90 had become the sound of Gibson guitars, it was still a single coil pickup, and it was susceptible to picking up unwanted noise from external electric sources. Gibson engineer Seth Lover had again been charged to create a new pickup and find a solution as stage volumes continued to increase. And so he did. By adding a second reverse coil placed side by side with the opposite magnetic polarities, when then wired in series, his design rejected much of the hum that single-coil pickups were susceptible to, but still passed along all the guitar's tone. It's important to remember that Gibson did not set out to make a different sounding pickup, but rather a quiet pickup that sounded like their beloved P90. In addition to the new construction, Lover added a thin metal cover to further reject electrostatic interference. Though they're generally referred to as nickel covers, they're actually made from German silver or nickel silver, an alloy of nickel, copper, and zinc, which was relatively easy to solder to the pickup's baseplate. One of my favorite stories around the launch of the humbucking pickup has to do with the much sought-after stickers on the bottom. At their launch, the pickups had a sticker that read, "Patent applied for," to warn off anyone looking to copy the pickup. This led to the earliest Gibson humbucking pickups being referred to as PAFs, or PAFs if you're from Britain. These stickers are on pickups from the years running from '57 to late '62. The patent had actually been granted in '59, but Gibson had continued to add these stickers for 2 additional years. One theory about why they did this is that they wanted to discourage competitors from looking up the patent and using it to develop their own version of the humbucker. The other theory, which seems equally possible, is that Gibson was simply using up the stickers they had in stock. And then in '62, when they did add a sticker with the patent number, the number listed seems to have been intentionally wrong. These pickups, generally referred to as patent number pickups, have a patent number that is actually for a bridge patent. The question remains whether this was a simple mistake or a final attempt to make it difficult to look up the humbucking pickup patent. In '57, Gibson was faced with how to differentiate the Custom once again. If the Standard was getting 2 of the new pickups, then the Custom would get 3. These would be the first factory 3-pickup Les Pauls. With 3 factory pickups and a 3-way selector switch, you immediately want to know which pickups were on in each position. The answer is neck only, middle and bridge, and finally bridge only. Of course, people began modding them to get other positions soon after the introduction, but that's how they came from the factory. a fan of 70s rock guitar, the custom that likely leaps to mind is Peter Frampton's guitar. The iconic photo of him with the guitar on the cover of Frampton Comes Alive was the start of the dream of owning a custom for many young players. Interestingly, the guitar bridges the two eras as it's actually a 54 guitar that was modified with 3 pickups at a later time. Frampton used the guitar during his time with Humble Pie and then in his solo career between 1970 and 1980. Nicknamed the Phoenix because the guitar was believed to have been lost in a cargo plane crash in South America only to surface 30 years later in usable condition. Frampton uses the guitar to this day. Gibson did a reissue run of the guitars as recently as 2021. Jimmy Page used a 1960 Les Paul Custom as one of his main guitars until it was stolen in the Minneapolis airport in 1970. Famously, when Joe Walsh offered to sell him his 59 Les Paul Burst that would become Page's #1, Jimmy is said to have replied, "I've already got a Les Paul," referring to the 3 pickup custom. And John Fogerty used various Les Paul customs in Creedence Clearwater Revival, along with a short-scale Rickenbacker 325 model. Fogerty often used his customs to tune down to D standard, an entire step lower than standard tuning. When one of his customs was severely damaged, Fogerty had his luthier fit a custom short-scale neck similar to the one he had on his Rickenbacker 325 to use alongside with his other customs. He'd then use the short-scale custom in standard tuning and the factory-scale instruments in D. As I often do, I turned to my good friend and vintage wise man, Dave Honorato at Dojo Guitar Repair for the skinny on customs. He said that once they went to 3 humbuckers, there were a very small number of 2 pickup customs built for special orders between 57 and 60. Dave estimates that only between 10 and 20 2 pickup customs were ever made, making them some of the rarest PAF guitars ever. I reached out to TrueFire to be my sponsor because I've used them for years. With over 2 million users worldwide, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level player, TrueFire has lessons to enhance and inspire your playing. Get 35% off courses using the promo code 5watt35, or like I do, sign up for the All Access Pass to use the entire TrueFire catalog. I really like TrueFire, and I think if you give them a shot, you'll like them too. Sign up now to start your journey to being a better guitarist. I'd like to thank TrueFire for their support in making this video. Les Paul sales fell from the mid-50s until the introduction of the Sunburst Les Pauls midway through 58. The Sunburst finishes were in fact an attempt to revitalize the model that only yielded a small bump that first year. So in 1961, Gibson moved away from its traditional design aesthetic, issuing the double cutaway all-mahogany Les Paul Standard and Custom. As the endorsement contract with Les Paul ran out at the end of '62, with the specter of Les Paul's disapproval hanging over the new design, the guitars would then simply be called the SG Standard and the SG Custom. SG standing for Solid Guitar. It's for this reason the 61 and 62 SG-shaped guitars are referred to as Les Paul SGs to differentiate them from the SGs that came later. The new thinner and beveled body was a completely new design having little in common with the guitars that bore the name from 52 to 60. Of course, this was true for the Custom as well, but the thing that is immediately apparent on the 1961 Les Paul SG Customs is the move to the Polaris White as the standard color. No artist is as associated with this period as Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the sole pioneer who all of the famous 60s British blues artists, as well as Elvis and countless others, would reference over the years. Gibson currently makes a custom shop version of this guitar, which can be seen in some of the world's biggest stages today, played by Celeste Henderson. Of course, Dave Honorato came through and reminded me that it was possible to order a custom SG in black. And these stick out because the original's being black, but you could order a custom at the time in any of the Gibson custom color chart that came out with the Firebirds in '63. Along with the custom colors, you could order the guitar with an optional B5 Bigsby vibrato instead of the vibrola that came standard and was generally deemed unusable as a vibrato. The 61 Custom Les Paul SG was launched at a price of $395, and the standard was $265 at the same time. explosion of the 60s, with players like Eric Clapton and Peter Green playing late 50s Les Pauls, finally reached the ears of guys at Gibson, and in 1968 they reissued the original single-cut body style Standard and custom guitars. Bizarrely, the Standard was issued with P90s when the world was clamoring for humbucking-equipped Pauls, and the custom came back in the black and gold Black Beauty livery with 2 humbucking pickups. And one of the biggest changes was that they went to a maple top under the paint. Along with the black custom, Gibson issued the first ever white Les Paul customs, all of which have now mellowed to the color of Irish butter, it seems. Also in the late 70s, try-anything era at Norlin, they built a number of customs with baked maple fingerboards instead of ebony, but discontinued this early in the 80s, as well as they returned to the more traditional woods. The image of a white custom is arguably as iconic as the earlier black guitars and includes Randy Rhoads using a 1974 model at the time he got the gig with Ozzy Osbourne. This guitar is visible on many live Ozzy performances and some rare earlier Quiet Riot live videos. Lindsey Buckingham used either a 74 or 75 white custom on Fleetwood Mac's Rumors record and live through the next tour, but following that he seems to have sold it soon afterward. The Edge plays a 1975 white custom. Justin Hawkins of the British band The Darkness has 2 2001 white customs, featured on every album the band has recorded. From 79 to 83, Gibson built an estimated 150 to 200 Les Paul customs in what they called Silverburst, and it was one of these that Adam Jones used in Tool. Jones is supposed to have collected as many as 6 of these very rare guitars over the time from that original run. Producer and sideman for David Bowie, Mick Ronson, famously used a 1968 black custom that would have been stripped down to the bare wood. Ronson removed the finish out of the belief that it would improve the resonance and high-frequency response of the guitar. After Ronson's death, the custom was missing for many years until it was finally located by guitarist Rick Tedesco, hanging in a hard rock cafe in Australia. He worked out a trade with hard rock. He'd eventually sell the guitar to a famous collector, immediately regretting it as the deal went through. Along with Frampton, my early dreams of a custom, and dreams is all they ever were fueled by the cover of Al Di Meola's Elegant Gypsy. A record I'd never heard until the fusion rock guy across the hall in my dorm brought it over one day with some rare early Genesis and Camel records. Di Meola's guitar was built in 1971, and he recently told Guitar World that he has plans to sell the guitar that he used with Chick Corea's Return to Forever band, and then his solo career. He said that 71 weighs about 400 pounds. The guitar has been customized with DiMarzio dual sound pickups and coil tapping switches. Along with a 50-watt Marshall, he blazed his way into our memories with Race with the Devil on Spanish Highway. Late in 75, Gibson moved to using a 3-piece maple neck with a volute to help strengthen the headstock joint on Les Pauls, and that included the customs. They would stay with the maple necks until 81, when they returned to a 1-piece mahogany, and the volute went away as well with the maple. In the mid-70s, a transparent wine red finish was also introduced. The finish is most notably seen on Alice in Chains guitarist Jerry Cantrell's guitar that he got in the early 90s along with 3 others, but the red, or wino, was the one he decided to reissue in 2021. In 74, Gibson released a 20th anniversary custom in white, black, cherry sunburst, and honey sunburst. In 76, the new Nashville bridge replaced the original ABR-1 Tune-O-Matic. Some guitars in that run were also built with 3 pickups again. Which brings us back to Kiss. In the wake of Kiss Alive, Ace Frehley was using Les Paul Deluxes with humbuckers installed on that first tour, and Gibson was glad to put more of their guitars in his hands. The Deluxes were soon set aside in favor of a number of Les Paul customs, the first being a black custom with 2 pickups that he immediately swapped out to DiMarzio's. He would later add a faux pickup in the middle position on this black custom. Following the Destroyer tour, Frehley bought the 3-pickup custom with a cherry sunburst finish that would later serve as the model for his 1990 signature guitars and his 2011 Budokan model. He said that he bought it at Manny's Music in New York, where it was, again originally, a 2-pickup model. They had had the middle pickup added because he'd always loved the look of the 3-pickup Les Paul customs. Since Gibson has never offered a 3-pickup custom in Cherry Burst, this unique guitar became as recognizable as Frehley's Spaceman makeup. Soon after Zakk Wylde joined Ozzy Osbourne's band in '87, a friend that owned a music store took in a heavily yellowed white 1981 custom and told Zakk he'd trade him if he could find a black double-neck Gibson. Wylde found the double neck and made the trade. Prior to doing a photo shoot for the first record with Ozzy, he said, "Dude, I can't have a clean Les Paul. That's a Randy Rhoads signature thing." So he asked to have a Vertigo design painted on it, like the one from Alfred Hitchcock's movie, but when he got it back, it ended up being just a bullseye on it. The photo shoot was the very next day, so they went with it, and it became his signature thing. In '84, Gibson closed their plant in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and moved production to the plant in Nashville. By the end of the '80s, the Les Paul Custom had settled into their best approximation of the two pickup models that they'd brought back into the line in '68. From early 2000s on, Les Paul Customs have come out of the Gibson Custom Shop, or issued in a wide variety of specs that had little to do with the original imagining from Les Paul himself. Customs have certainly achieved the original goal of being the upscale Les Paul for the professional musician. Many players of these guitars were at the top of their craft, and these models became what a young player should strive for by way of success. While the Les Paul Standard was never really a working-class musician's guitar, it might be seen that way when compared to a custom. And for many players chasing the heights of the great Les Paul Custom players, it fits right into the idea that you should dress for the job you want, as it truly is the tuxedo of the electric guitar world. If you missed your favorite part of the Les Paul Custom story, please put it in the comments for everyone to enjoy. I know from experience that I can count on you. First, I need to thank Dave Hunter and Tony Bacon for their amazing books chronicling the history of the Les Paul. I need to thank Victory Amps and Rabea Massadd for the permission to use the clips of Rabea playing his 1971 Les Paul Custom. I need to thank the guys at Wildwood Guitars and Greg Koch for the ever-present majesty of his demos of a couple of recent customs they have. I need to thank the guys at Carter Vintage for permission to use clips of amazing vintage customs that they've had the pleasure of having come through, played by J.D. Simo and Jared James Nichols. I need to thank YouTuber Steve Serlacci for playing his incredibly rare custom Les Paul on the intro and outro to the video. I need to thank my script editor Perry McManus for working on another script. I asked Perry recently what he'd buy if he lost it all in a fire, and I was surprised when he told me that his Les Paul would be one of the two guitars he'd rebuy. I need to thank everyone that stopped by the store and grabbed a hoodie or a Stomp preset pack. In particular, I need to thank the friends of 5 Watt. You're all 5 Watt world. I just make the videos. If you enjoyed this short history of the Gibson Les Paul Custom, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that too. Thanks for hanging with me until the end. Until next time, I'm Keith Williams. Thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt world.